All right, in this video I want to start talking about the drawing idea of gesture. So what is gesture? Gesture is the action of the pose that you see, or the feeling of movement or rhythm that, that seems to be invested in whatever you're drawing, whether it's something that's organic and living like the human figure, or even if it's something that is inanimate or man-made. Everything has potentially a sense of activity or movement or gesture to it. And this is something that needs to be internalized by the artist at the beginning of the drawing. So I know if you're in a drawing one class, we've looked at some other ideas before gesture, but now gesture is something that you need to sort of fit into your thinking at the very beginning. And it's a little bit of a jump because if you're in drawing one, we've been talking about straight lines a lot, and gesture is something that it's a type of construction line that's based on a more organic or curving kind of line. So it's a little bit of a departure from what we've been talking about. But a simple way to think about gesture, if you're thinking about something like the figure, where we can explain it most easily, I think, is to ask yourself not what does the model look like, but what's the model doing? What's the activity? What's the motion or the rhythm? What's the narrative of the pose? What is that person doing? So, here the person is obviously sort of dancing, and there's a particular kind of rhythm that's created by that, and that's the gesture. And that's something that we can explain very simply and very quickly at the beginning of the drawing before we get caught up with things like proportions and what the model actually looks like. So why is gesture important? Well, obviously it gives us sort of the spirit of the thing that we're looking at. And if you're dedicated to the idea of kind of investing yourself with that notion of gesture or activity or rhythm, and even if you're drawing an inanimate object, like something like this drill has a particular kind of energy and movement to it, and you can think of it as dynamic, or the way it sort of moves up and then juts out, or you can think of it as threatening, the way this thing sort of comes out almost like a beak or something. But the idea is to try to identify yourself, like bodily identify with the thing that you're drawing. So it's not just, so the act of drawing is not just this rote copying, but you're first investing yourself with the thing that it is that you're drawing, and you're giving something that's unique about yourself into the drawing, and that's why it's important. It's not simply about getting the particular pose that you see correct. It's about investing yourself in the drawing, and so gesture is really critical in order to give something very unique and about yourself into the drawing. Okay, so how do we sense gesture? Well, the best way is to try to make some kind of connection between yourself and what you're looking at, and what we have are our bodies. So feeling the pose, like getting, in my figure drawing class, I actually have students get into the pose so that they feel it. Whatever this model is doing, you get into that pose, you feel it, you sense it in your body. Our muscle memory is very good, and so once you sort of feel the pose, then you can kind of retain the spirit of it and draw it. Because we can't look at the model and draw the model at the same time, right? We're looking, and then we're going to our page, looking again, going to our page. So we have to have some way to kind of carry the image along with us. And the best way to do that is for you to empathize, to sort of bodily connect with whatever it is that you're looking at. So we need to sense it first before we draw it. We have to get it in ourselves before we draw it. And then how do we draw it? So there's a lot of information up here. What we want to do with the gesture drawing is kind of cut through a lot of that detail and just go for the thing itself, that gesture. And again, the way we do that is through an arcing line. When we look at nature, there are no straight lines in nature. Everything is sort of curving, arcing, backwards and forwards, and in all kinds of ways. So, the kind of the magic gestural line in art is something like this. It's a curve or an arc that often moves back on itself. So it's like this idea of an S curve, and it can even continue an arc back. But that's kind of the living gestural idea. So everything that we see, we want to convert into a rhythmic arc that's sort of connecting up with all the other rhythms in the figure. So if I was going to do a gestural drawing of this figure, I would not start on the outside, as we may have been doing in, say, in drawing one and looking at the envelope, but actually going inside. So the gesture is this abstract rhythm or feeling inside the figure. It's nothing that we can see on the model. It's an abstract representation of that organic rhythm that we're seeing. So looking at this, starting from the head, I feel like this big sweep down into the leg, and then it moves back. So from the head into the body, and then into the leg, and then that leg sweeps back into the foot, and this other leg sweeps back, and then the arm going around here, and this arm sort of connects with this on here. So it's this big sweeping movement that's connecting. That's what we want to get a sense of from head to toe. Everything connecting and just kind of swimming together in this beautiful kind of arcing motion. And out of room up here. So I'm going to do it again because that arm is important. So I'll start a little bit lower here. So again, that big sweep into the leg. So when you're doing a gesture drawing, it's nice to think in terms of never lifting your drawing utensil from the paper, because you want everything to just flow together. These arms, you're not sort of sticking an arm onto a limb and then sticking the other arm on. You're seeing how everything is connected, everything is flowing together, and it's just a two-dimensional, two-dimensional rhythm that we're going after. And that gives us kind of the core rhythmic underpinning that we would then build the drawing on top of. But if this isn't sensed at the beginning, and if we just start drawing what we see and we're not thinking about this, the tendency is to miss this dynamic inner quality to the thing that we're drawing, and then we end up with something that's too upright. It's not flowing enough, so it feels it may be accurate in terms of proportion, but it looks kind of stiff. Okay, so that's the foundation of gesture. The next step, which we'll look at in the next video, is making sure that we build correctly on top of this organic rhythmic beginning.